All right, let's talk about this man, John Herdman, who is no longer Toronto FC's head coach. He resigned just a few days ago after 15 months as head coach. He was hired in August of 2023. And some of what he said, it's that he decided it was a right time to step aside while the club, quote, defines its vision for the future. Mao, what do you think of his decision, for starters?
I mean, I think it's the right decision just because when you're involved in a scandal the way Canada soccer has been dealing with for the past months, it's unsustainable. You need a fresh start. You combine that with the results were not there, sporting-wise, then it's probably the best for every part involved to cut ties and look for new beginnings. I feel for John Herdman because he's an important name in Canada soccer. What he did at a national team level, now what he was trying to do at a club level with a club that 5 years ago was always competing for titles, but now in a downslide that it's looking dramatic. But there's no place for this kind of controversy in our sport, and when your name is somehow attached to it, then I believe that everybody needs to take a moment, step away from the game, and then we'll see what happens in the future. But for now, that seems like the right call.
Speaking of the future, do you think we'll see him again in MLS?
Well, we got to see how this plays out, and let's go into parts here, right? There's him stepping away from Toronto FC, so you can say, okay, is he stepping away because the results weren't there, or he doesn't think he can deal with that locker room culture because there's issues with the star players, there's issues with John Herdman leading that team. It seems like there's a civil war amongst, many of those, that fan base and the organization. It's just a very toxic environment. So why is he stepping away there? Then there's the talk of, well, the chips are going to fall where they may, and John Herdman may be somewhat found culpable for the dealings of when he was the head coach of the Canadian men's national team and that drone scandal. Bev Priestman, the women's coach on the Canadian side, was let go. She was fired. There were consequences for that. There have been reports that John Herdman knew about the drone scandal and was heavily involved in allowing that to continue. So you have to assume that sooner rather than later, we're going to hear about things coming out of his involvement and maybe a punishment for that. So maybe both parties came to a head here and say, hey, this is the best for everybody right now. Let's end this where it is. Let's say that blows over. Let's say there's a suspension, whatever the case may be. He does what he needs to do to pay back whatever or make amends for whatever situation comes out of that. I've seen crazier things in Major League Soccer. Bruce Arena now is the head coach of the San Jose Earthquakes. He made insensitive remarks while being the head coach for the New England Revolution. What remarks? We do not know because the league kept that dark. He was suspended. He is now being reinstated. And when we thought nobody would touch him, here he is with the San Jose Earthquakes. So will he come back to Major League Soccer? I think so. I think, as you mentioned, he's a very beloved character in Canada. There are two other teams in Canada. He's a well-respected figure in North America in these circles. There are a bunch of teams in Major League Soccer, and I cannot for the life of me think he's a very expensive coach. And I, for the life of me, don't think that even if he pays whatever punishment has to be casted out, that he won't have a future or won't be around after. It's too early to tell right now, but I've seen crazier things in this league.
Do you agree?
I agree. I mean, it's not only in this business, in every business, you are as beloved as your last result. What's your last image? What's the last picture that we have of you? So not until we know what exactly happened and how really involved he was in this scandal, then we can start creating or speculating about his future. Because, and this is obviously speculating, if he was heavily involved for a long time,
as the reports
indicate, then the punishment might be that heavy that he might not work again in this area. Again, this is just speculating, and not until we have confirmed results of the investigation. But the feeling is that the things that he did, all the positives that he's bringing to the table probably will leave the door open for another opportunity.
Now, let's just be honest. He didn't exactly shower himself in glory with Toronto FC. There were tons of issues there in that locker room with the culture. For as beloved as he was with the Canadian national team, he had a falling out towards the end. He lost that locker room, and he was coming to a locker room that was already lost when Bob Bradley left. The star players, Lorenzo Insigne and Bernadeschi, were at odds with each other. It was just a disaster of a locker room and of a culture clash and of a toxic relationship amongst all. Maybe this is the best for all parties involved.
Yeah, we'll see. For the moment, he stepped aside. Maybe it was for his personal decision. Maybe it was doing the club a favor as well and not having to actually fire him, although the compensation would have been a little bit different, but maybe he just wanted to avoid that. We do want to remind you that every day you can watch ESPN FC on ESPN, plus Dan and the Gang or Kay and the Gang.